If you're a female dancer, you've probably had the experience of walking into class one day feeling strong and energized, and another day feeling completely depleted, even though nothing about your training has changed. For many of us, that can actually be connected to something rarely acknowledged in the ballet world: how our bodies shift and change throughout our menstrual cycles. Today, I'm joined by Jess, dancer, nutrition coach, and the founder of The Whole Dancer, to talk about how women can fuel their training in a way that supports both performance and hormonal health. We talk about why understanding your cycle is critical if you're training regularly, how needs and cravings can shift throughout the month, the signs you might be underfueling, and what a well-balanced day of eating might look like for adult dancers. We also discuss supplements, how to support your body on lower energy weeks, and one simple first step you can take if you want to start syncing your fueling more intentionally with your cycle. This conversation is packed with helpful insights for female dancers who want to empower their bodies for the demands of ballet training. Let's get into it. Before we get started, a quick reminder. This episode is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. It's not intended to diagnose or treat any injury, and it does not replace working with a qualified medical professional. If you're experiencing persistent pain or symptoms, please consult your doctor or a licensed provider. Hello, Jess. Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited to chat with you about this topic.
Hey, Hannah, I'm thrilled to connect with you as well.
So I think this is going to be a really practical one for the female listeners. My audience is about 95% women for the podcast, unsurprisingly, when it comes to adult ballet. Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be a really helpful one and a practical one, I think, for that audience, because we're going to be talking all about fueling and supporting our bodies through our monthly cycles, and specifically when it comes to nutrition and how we eat, the choices we make. So I would love if we could just jump right in if you're ready.
Totally. It's such an important piece of how we can approach. I said can instead of should, because I think especially women don't need to feel like, oh, there's just one more thing I should be doing, right? But like, it's one more thing that we really can do to support ourselves, not only from a physical perspective and in terms of nutrition, but also considering your mood and mindset and how it all affects your sleep and focus and your movement practice
Yeah.
as well. And, naturally, we have very cyclical shifts within the frame of a month that men don't experience, and so like we are different in that way. And it's really important to acknowledge that. And I think give ourselves permission to follow the ebbs and flows of a cycle instead of feeling like, oh no, I'm supposed to be able to function exactly the same way 365 days a year. It's just not realistic. And so, I felt like it would be helpful just to kind of talk about some of the shifts that happen within phases of your cycle. And, some of what I'm sure we'll talk about moving forward is going to be about, natural stuff that comes up for us within the frames and different phases of your cycle. But, just to kind of give an overview, in your menstrual phase, when you're actually on your period, it is very natural to want to or need to slow down. You need extra sleep. Women really benefit from self-care during that time. Uh, we have downshifts in estrogen and the neurotransmitter serotonin, and therefore you may notice cravings, and low blood sugar will also accentuate those experiences in your menstrual phase. Then you get into your follicular phase, which is like calm, optimistic. You sleep easier. You may feel like you can focus more sharply. You have fewer cravings, less appetite, and energy and mood actually feel boosted. Following that is ovulation, which is like our peak energy time. Mood and optimism are like up, like we're feeling good. We tend to eat less naturally during that time if we actually like follow what our body is telling us, and may want to exercise more, and fewer cravings, higher willpower when it comes to like feeling like, oh, what's going on for me food wise. And then just before your period, the luteal phase, I think, is for me personally, the hardest time. But it makes sense because that is when we have the most dramatic downshifts in mood and energy, and that's the PMS phase of things, like, especially right towards the end of the luteal phase where you're gonna be moody, irritable, reactive, like, it's a very natural hormonal response, and it's an energy low point. And so, like, if ever there's a time in your cycle when you might be like, "Oh my god, I don't wanna do any of the workouts I had planned," like, that's usually the time. And our food and nutrition, it naturally gets all, tied up in all of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's so great to talk about the phases because I don't know if this is just my age, but, like, growing up, I don't feel like I had a really good understanding of what was happening apart from all the jokes that everyone makes about PMS and then being on your period and like, "Oh, you're cranky." That's kind of the extent of understanding, quote, unquote, "what's going on in your body." And I think as a dancer, obviously, like, dancers are so connected to all the minutia of how our bodies feel, and I think, when you are dancing as an adult, whether you're coming back to it or you're starting for the first time, you really notice that your cycle is so much more than just the mood swings and the PMS jokes. Like, there's
Totally.
so much going on with energy and all these different things, and I just think it's so beneficial, and, like, I've loved in the last really even just couple of years being able to understand it more because I think especially too in ballet, like, ballet culture, and I don't know if this is just traditionally because there has been men more so in positions of leadership within the ballet world, but I think even from female teachers, you can feel that pressure that you just have to perform at the same level all the time, and, like, you have to show up to class and be consistent every day, and it's not realistic, and I think when you can kind of understand that and give yourself that grace of, like, my body is going through different things at different times, and so, inevitably, that's gonna show up in the classroom. It's just so helpful to understand.
Yeah, and I think adult ballet dancers have a really great opportunity to truly honor themselves and their needs through the monthly fluctuations. Because naturally, when I work with professional dancers, we have the conversation where I'm like, look, it makes perfect sense that you have no energy in this week. It is your job to still show up. So you just have to
Yeah.
give yourself lots of grace through what you're doing. For adult ballet dancers, you have the freedom to say, "You know what? I'm gonna do beginner classes this week instead of intermediate or advanced," like, "I'm going to do floor bar today instead of my usual class." And I think that that's a really beautiful thing to take advantage of and give yourself permission to do. Because, like you said, even in adult ballet communities, there can be teachers and things who make you feel like it has to be exactly, "Oh, if you're not showing up and giving 110% all the time, then
Yeah.
you're not gonna improve that much." And it's like, "No, really."
And I love what you said about honoring your body and your cycle because I do think that the more you work with it and lean into it versus fighting it. Like, I think sometimes we have this very adversarial relationships with our body and our cycle of like, "No, I just need to suck it up and push through," and again, like, I think that can be coming from a number of different places and things that we've absorbed, but, it's such a freeing space to live in to lean into what your body is asking you for a little bit more. Like, when you're talking about, feeling much more tired at certain times, I was like, "Yes, that is so accurate." And when I let myself sleep a little more in those times versus just trying to fight through it, I'm honoring my body, by giving myself that permission to like, yeah, sleep a little more. That's great. So, talking about specifically fueling and nutrition and food, how does understanding our cycle affect the way we fuel our bodies across the span of a monthly cycle? Like, are there going to be adjustments or different things that we would notice or want to shift at different times?
I think if you pay attention, and I do think that all women should be tracking even casually in some sort of an
Mm.
or in your planner, wherever it makes sense to you. A lot of the apps at least are helpful because 'cause they'll remind you what goes on in the phase. They'll be like, "It's normal to feel this way during this period of time," and I find that very reassuring even myself to just, like, listen to
Yes.
like, "Oh, right, luteal phase, like, this is why I have no patience," I'm totally irritable all the time. And it's very affirming. It's not in your head, and if you learn to and practice listening to your body and what it's telling you in terms of your food needs, it's very likely you're going to feel hungrier in the luteal phase, the period of time before your period. And your body also burns more during that phase.
Mm.
10% more, some studies say.
Wow.
Some studies have said up to 20% more. So, like, you burn significantly more energy during that phase just because of what your body is handling and doing internally. And so, you do need more food. And we tend to be drawn to things like carbohydrates. For me, it's always I always want something sweet and carby, like a muffin or a scone. And then like noodles are a big thing for me in that time. I'm like, oh gosh, I just like want pasta or noodles.
Yes. Pasta.
But it makes sense because as your estrogen dips, so does the feel good neurotransmitter serotonin, right? And our body can turn carbohydrates into serotonin. So to eat the carbs when you feel like you need them is going to give you a legitimate mood boost. And like I said, your body's also burning more energy. So it's likely that you need that anyway. So I think to listen to your body in that period of time, you may still be craving comfort foods when you actually start your period, but also we tend to get some of our energy back, like usually by day 3 or 4.
Mhm.
So, like, odds are you'll be like, okay, I don't feel amazing because I feel bloated and stuff, but I do want to get moving again. So I'm going to, get back to my regular workouts. And then if you're craving the things, sometimes it's helpful to say, "Okay, like, what I'm craving is a piece of cake." Sometimes just have the cake, right? But, like, sometimes if you're like, "No, okay, I had the cake and I'm still craving the carbs," so then to go to a more complex carb, like a sweet potato or something like that, right? Like, I eat a lot of potatoes generally
Mhm.
in that period of time as well, and, like,
Yeah.
I love a potato, and it's so, like, it's oftentimes a part of my breakfast, but, like, there's many periods of time where I just don't really feel like I have time to include that in my breakfast, but during that time, when I know I want it and I know it's gonna really benefit me and my needs, I'll prioritize it.
Yeah, and I love hearing just even like it validates that when our bodies are craving certain things or when we're hungrier,
Yeah.
that's not just again this joke, of like, oh, I just want to eat everything. It's like, no, your body is actually telling you something. And I think that's one of the overarching difficulties when it comes to just this topic in general is so much of it has been turned into jokes and like memes. And in some ways, I think that's does us a disservice because it kind of writes off things that are really happening in our body of like, oh, you don't just wanna, like, eat carbs and sit around with potato chips on your couch for no reason. Your body is actually asking for something that's a real biological need. Thank you to Apolla Performance Wear for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. If you're an adult dancer, you know how important it is to take care of your body so you can keep showing up to class consistently. And that's why Apolla has been part of my routine for over 3 years. Their compression products are truly my most used support and recovery tools, both in and out of the studio. The magic is in Apolla's use of graduated compression, the same compression level used in medical recovery garments, to help increase blood flow, reduce swelling, and help reduce the risk of injury. Their products are podiatrist approved and designed to support dancers through class, recovery, and everyday life. My personal favorite is their Jewel socks. They fit perfectly both over and under point shoes and slippers, and provide targeted arch and ankle compression without covering your toes or restricting mobility. They come in multiple nude shades as well as ballet pink, so they blend seamlessly into your skin or tights without cutting your lines. I also love their K-Warmer full-length leg warmers, which provide compression through the entire leg and offer knee and ankle support, as well as that extra warmth we all love. For daily wear, I use the Performance Crew socks, which feel great inside your sneakers or your favorite house slippers, making it so easy to support your body's recovery after class. It's also Apolla's #1 bestseller, with over 1,700 reviews, so you know it works. You'll find me in Apolla socks during ballet class, point work, travel days, and running errands. For adult dancers focused on longevity and recovery, their products are truly a game changer. Head to apollaperformance.com and use code AFTERCLASS10 for 10% off your first pair until March 31st. I would love to talk to you about protein specifically because this is just like such a hot topic in athletics, fitness, dance, just really in popular culture. So, how does protein intake support female dancers specifically? And does our need for a certain amount of protein change throughout our cycle?
It's obviously it plays a great role in many things, especially muscle strength and building. When we are in our luteal phase and therefore in need of more energy, but we crave the carbs for the reasons why that we already discussed, right? It can still be very helpful to make sure you're balancing your protein and including it and incorporating it in significant enough ways. So, like when I have my day where I'm like, I just need a scone, I don't not have my usual breakfast and just have the scone, right? Like I still have my breakfast that has a good amount of eggs or a tofu in order to get the protein that I need. And that also allows you to eat something like a scone without it having a huge impact on your blood sugar that would just
Mhm,
kind of make you feel awful later on.
mhm.
So I think it's not that protein specifically goes up in any real significant way or need goes up in any significant way, but it's mostly just that I think when you can maintain focus on it and keep a balance through your whole cycle, like you're going to be feeling just much better off.
No, that's helpful, to think of just maintaining consistency even when there are cravings for other things versus, like, replacing, a protein with a carb when you're craving carbs, like, keep the protein, and
Yeah.
if you need to add, because I think that that's something that especially in my 20s, I was so bad about just not eating enough protein in general, but especially when I would be in different phases of my cycle where I just wanted carbs, I would just like not eat protein. And I was
Right.
dancing a ton in my 20s and I'm sure I was so underfueled because
Totally.
I was doing that and I think that it's probably a fairly common thing to do.
Yeah, because I think it's very normal, especially when you're pursuing an aesthetic art that's in front of a mirror, oftentimes. It makes us feel like our food choices always have to have trade-offs. And it's like, no, like if I'm gonna eat something sweet or a piece of cake or a cupcake, like that means I have to make significant adjustments to something else in order to fit it in. And I think it's just a very slippery slope. And we do much better when we do continue to include the stuff that we know works for us from a food standpoint, and the balanced meals that we eat normally. Like I said, when you recognize your body does in fact burn more energy during that time, it's like, no, it's like the cupcake is necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, and so how does underfueling impact dancers over time? What would the signs be that you maybe are not getting enough, and what are some of the potential risks of that?
I think something that can stand out most obviously would be the loss of the period, right? And sometimes it doesn't happen right away for some dancers. It's just in busier dancing times. So, like if you're an adult dancer who's going to summer intensive or something like that, it's going to be 2 weeks of more dancing, and you don't make a plan to ensure that you're fueling enough, or like, if you usually dance 2 hours a day and you're going to be dancing 6 or 8 hours a day, naturally you got to make some changes. And we don't always plan ahead for that kind of thing. And so it can be a pretty, quick response, like, oh, I had this really intense month and then I didn't get a period the next month. And
Mhm,
if you get it back the following months, like it's probably okay. But if it's you're missing it often, or it's
mhm.
very unpredictable, then it's very likely that you're not actually eating enough, or you're encountering way more stress than what you're coping with.
Yeah.
Thirst sometimes is a
Oh.
sign that we're not, in fact, eating enough. That's because when we get enough food, it helps balance electrolytes. And so if you don't get enough food, your body is just gonna ask for more water sometimes. If you're constantly cold, if your body is not regulating temperature well, that's a sign you're probably not eating enough. If you're struggling in class, to pick up or retain choreography. Part of that is practice, naturally, right? But like it could be connected to not actually giving your brain enough fuel in order to stay focused. Dizziness, fainting, right? Low energy, which I think we don't quite acknowledge
Yeah.
enough, like if you don't have the energy to do the things you're doing, you might not be eating enough food.
Yeah, and that's, like, such a big one, I think, for women too, because we always have a lot going on.
Yeah,
So it's easy to attribute low energy to that,
right.
and just like, "Oh, well, I just have so much going on. I'm so busy." And especially, I'm sure if you have kids, like, I can only imagine there's just so many things going on, and so I think a lot of times that can be seen as the culprit, but really it can be lack of food. Like, I know there's just been seasons where I've seen that shift, oh my gosh, like crazy. Like, I couldn't believe when I went from chronically underfueling in my 20s to actually trying to be more intentional about protein intake and the amount of calories I was consuming in a day. I was like, I didn't know how I could feel. I thought living at low energy was just normal. And I think if you live in that state for a really long time, you start to just think that that's how you are. And you don't know what you don't know. So, like, when that becomes your everyday, you just accept it. And when I started eating more and I had all this energy coming back, I was like, oh my gosh. It was like I'd been living in a dark room and someone flipped a light on, and I was just like, "What? This is incredible." And so I think, you can experience a really big shift
Yeah.
just through the amount that you're eating. And I think specifically, I would love to hear just if you have any specific thoughts or ideas, because I know a lot of adults that come to ballet, especially if they're coming for the first time later in life. Like, I get DMs and stuff about this a lot, and I'm like, this is not necessarily my area of expertise, but I can only share what's worked for me."
Yeah.
And, people that have maybe been eating a certain way pre-dance, pre-ballet, and then they start taking, usually it starts as 1 class, then it maybe becomes 2 classes, 3
Yeah.
classes, 4 classes a week, but they don't know how they should be adjusting their diets to support all the extra training that they're asking it to do. So I would love to hear if you have tips on that, because that is a question I get a lot and don't feel particularly well equipped to answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it doesn't have to be complicated. You do need to expect that if you're asking your body to do more, you need to give it more in order to do it well. Like you said too, when you are also balancing a full-time job and you might have kids at home and you have like all this stuff that's on your plate, I think it's very easy to not eat consistently.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the biggest key is that every day you're having 3 meals and probably a couple of snacks to support your dancing as well. My rule for time, and I don't have a lot of rules when it comes to food and stuff, but this is a rule. You shouldn't ever be letting more than 2 to 4 hours, 5 at the max, pass between eating. So, like, if you look at your schedule, and adult dancers should do this, you should sit down and look at your schedule and say, "Okay, like, what time do I typically eat breakfast?" Or are you someone who skips breakfast and runs out the door and gets a latte at Starbucks and call that breakfast, right? Like, we need to kind of consider how to adjust that, because it's not gonna help you later on when you're in dance
Mhm.
class. And it is not just the meal you eat right before you dance, but it is all the things, right? And, like,
Yeah.
days and weeks collectively that add up to what you're able to do. So, you don't wanna let too much time pass. So when you sit down and look at your schedule, if it's like, "Okay, I have breakfast at 7 and then I'm not eating lunch until 2," well, that's probably too long. You're probably either gonna get to a point where, like, your hunger has come and gone, so then you're like, "Meh, I'm fine, I don't need much, I'm gonna eat, this hard-boiled egg that I packed for a snack and call it lunch," right? And then, you go to you are done with work at 5 and you go to class at 6:30 and you don't eat anything so you gotta look at your schedule and actually say, "Where are my opportunities for fueling? Am I eating complete meals?" Which to me, for someone who's going to do something that requires so much energy, you do need protein, carbohydrates, and fat at most of your meals, you know? If you have some meals where it's like heavy on protein and vegetables, as an adult dancer, you can probably get away with that. Like if you're not dancing 6 hours a day, right? Maybe 2 or 3 hours, as long as you have carbohydrates happening here and there, right? At 2 or 3 meals, most likely. Um, but you want to make sure your meals are balanced and
Mm.
that you're not putting things together that are very incomplete or only protein, because only protein is not going to give you the energy you need for class. Incorporating snacks that are carb heavy before class, like an hour ish before, to have a granola bar. I think
Mm.
it's just to look at what you're doing and try to be really intentional. And of course, like reach out to someone if you want more support with that, because that's a big part, like the planning, the timing, like that's something that I talk about with adult dancers a lot.
Yeah, and I think it is so important to seek out people like you because I know so much of nutrition even is individual,
Oh,
and it's like I know even sometimes doing podcasts like this on topics of eating or just even like fitness in general because every person is so different that it's always this hard balance of wanting to present generally helpful information but also not be so specific because it might not be what one person needs, and so my always advice on topics like this is yes, seek out the counsel that is going to be specific to you from someone like Jess, who is qualified to do that because there are so many things that could be very unique to you as an individual.
and it's a big process of experimentation and
Yeah.
like trial and error. And what's very tricky with our current landscape is that we have influencers who do like have amazing, like, from society's standards, like amazing bodies, who
Mhm.
look at and like then they'll like sell an outline of their meal plan, and it's like, okay, cool, like if this is what works for that person, that's great for them, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for anyone else who might purchase this from them. And so to really recognize that you are an individual, what's gonna work for you has nothing to do with what works for the next person. So, to get like a
Mhm.
real tailored individual approach, and like to me too, it has so many factors. It's not at all just about food. It is your lifestyle, it is your sleep, it is how you're managing mood and stress and like paying attention to your cycles. It has to be really tailored.
Have you been craving more time in the studio and more connection with other adult dancers? If so, I have great news for you. This episode is sponsored by Label Active, a dance and activewear brand inspired by the artistry, discipline, and presence of dancers, and the host of the 2026 Adult Ballet Retreat. 5 full days of ballet classes and social activities designed specifically for adult dancers, taking place in Seattle, Washington, June 21st through the 26th. I've personally attended retreats hosted by this team multiple times, and it's always an unforgettable experience. There's nothing like spending a week surrounded by other adult dancers, immersed in your shared love of ballet, in a space that's supportive and encouraging. And this whole week is thoughtfully built around adults: the pacing, the coaching, the environment. And there's 3 levels to choose from. So whether you're a beginner or have been dancing for years, this event is for you. I'm so excited to be attending again this year, and I would genuinely love to dance with you in person. Registration closes on April 15th, so if you're interested, don't wait. And because you're part of the Afterclass community, you can use code AFTERCLASS100 and get $100 off your registration. All the details and links to register are in the show notes. If you've been dreaming of a ballet experience that fills your cup, I cannot recommend this retreat enough. Hope to see you there. I would love to hear thoughts on supplements because this is, again, kind of like protein, such a hot topic. Like, there's so many influencers selling different supplements and all the things. But are there any that you think generally are helpful for female dancers, specifically in this topic of our cycles, supporting our hormones, all that? Are there any that you're like, generally, these tend to be a pretty good idea?
I think it's important to consider some of the food craving information,
Mhm.
right? Like where when you crave chocolate before your period, it's because of your body's need for magnesium. And I don't think you should supplement magnesium so that you never eat chocolate, because you should just eat the chocolate. But like it's something to consider. Like, okay, is it like every month you have like super intense chocolate cravings, you may benefit from some supplementation of magnesium. And if you're someone who struggles with the sleep side of things, right, the magnesium can also support that. So that's worth looking at. A lot of people will say, oh, I really crave red meat at or around my period. And that's very natural too, because of your body's need for iron during that time as you're losing the blood. But I'm big on pushing your primary care doctors to do blood panels on all your vitamin levels every 6 months or a year, because that's what really gives us the information in terms of what kind of supplements we might really benefit from.
Is iron deficiency pretty common in women?
It can be, yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
especially active women, because there are, iron-induced losses from activity. So, like, you're active and you're getting a period consistently, like, yeah, some supplementation and intentionality with food helps a lot. Non-heme iron, if you consume it with a vitamin C rich food, it helps with absorption. So, like, if you're eating
Okay.
lentils, to eat an orange or some strawberries at the same time is gonna help your body actually utilize the iron from that food source.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I always am curious about that because that was iron deficiency was something that I, realized that I had in my
Mm.
20s, and I was just having all kinds of weird things happening, and they kind of all coalesced under iron deficiency, and
Yeah.
I hear, women, sometimes even, like, fellow dancers at the studio, they'll mention something, and I'm like, "That sounds like iron deficiency," which I would imagine is more
Mm.
common in women probably than men just
Yeah,
because of blood loss, so
right, and yeah, it can lead to some pretty obvious symptoms that we still
Mhm.
sometimes will try to push off or
Yeah.
ignore, and or like it's like, "Oh, no, it's, like, normal for me. I just get kind of dizzy when I'm
Mm.
in dance class," and it's like, "No, probably
Yeah.
not,"
Yeah.
some check out for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any specific snacks or things that you recommend? Like, I'm thinking pre-class. So if someone I know a lot of adult dancers, they go to class at the end of the day, they get off work, they may or may not have time to, like, go home and sit down and have a full meal. Are there any specific foods that you would say, like, this is a really good snack to have before you head in to take an hour and a half ballet class?
Yeah, carbs. Oftentimes, it doesn't feel awesome to have, like, something super high fat, so I would just stay aware of that. But it could be, like, an English muffin with a little bit of, peanut butter and some jelly, right? Like, the sugar there is gonna help. A granola bar is a good pre-class option. A banana,
Mm.
again, like, certainly can have it with nut butter, just notice how that feels for you. You might do a little less than you would do if you were just eating it at another time of the day. Other, like, smoothies, if you have time for something quick in terms of a smoothie, and, like, it could include Greek yogurt in that, it could just be something with a little bit of protein powder, but I would include something carby like fruit, pretzels,
Mm.
crackers, and again, right, like, you can balance that with some protein that feels good for you, some nuts, again, watching the fat because that doesn't feel great for everyone. I would avoid more fibrous things because that's often, digestively feels quite taxing
Yeah.
when you're going into class.
Would any of that be different, like, the week of your period, say, like, what you would eat before or after class? Are there any tips as far as, like, when you're in the thick of it, the week of, things that you would say, like, "This is a good adjustment that might make you feel a little better?"
Yeah. Oftentimes, if we really pay attention, right, like, we still might have some craving for comfort food during that time, but the energy need increase tends to really be in the luteal phase before. I mean, and that can linger the first couple of days, but, odds are some people feel a pretty sharp decrease in appetite. It doesn't mean you don't wanna still have your pre-class snack, but, you may really not require more than usual at that time.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think, I know I've struggled with this, like, it can be really hard to fuel consistently throughout my cycle because I'm definitely someone who feels the dips of hunger throughout that. Do you have any just thoughts on how to maintain eating enough as someone who is dancing more or less the same amount throughout the month regardless of what's going on biologically, but sometimes there just isn't that hunger that there is at other times. How can we approach that and deal with it in a way that's healthy?
I would commit to consistency, and like I said, the timing, never letting more than 4 or 5 hours pass between
Yeah.
eating. Even, sometimes that means to set a timer and if it's like, "Oh, I'm not actually hungry now, but in an hour I'm going to class for 2 hours," then it will at that point by the end of that, it will have been 7 hours since I
Yeah.
last ate. It's called proactive eating,
Mm,
to eat at the times when you're not physically hungry, but when you know your body would benefit from
yeah.
fuel in the coming hours.
Yeah.
That can feel very counter to the whole, intuitive eating and listening to your body and hunger cues and this and that. We're also impacted by our activity itself. So, like when you dance, it's very natural to not really feel hungry because your blood is going to your arms and legs and staying away from your digestive system. And it's like, I can't go back there. I have to be active and keep the blood in my arms and legs. So, I think that to recognize that fact as well and just know that, well, it doesn't mean you don't need anything just because the hunger might not be like spiking or super obvious in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, like, preparing is such a big part. I know for me, at least, that's been true, just trying to be more intentional about having stuff in my bag, because
Mhm.
I know life gets busy, and it's like, if you don't have it on you, it's that much easier to just not, whereas if you
Right.
keep something in your bag, like protein bars or granola bars or nuts, because I think, yeah, it can be really hard when you don't feel hungry, but I love what you said too, even about setting a timer, because I think, if you are someone who, like me, struggles with the hunger cues sometimes, like, I can easily not eat. It's so easy for me to just skip meals that it's like I can't always rely on that, and I love the idea of setting a timer because, the day can just get away from you so fast, and like you said, you can eat at 7 and then all of a sudden it's 2 o'clock and you're like, "Oh my god, I haven't eaten anything," and I know because that's also hard hormonally too, right? For your blood sugar and all that to be bouncing all over the place. Yeah, so, I love that of just, like, setting a timer. It's such, like, a practical thing you can do to make sure that you're eating in a way that's keeping you fueled. So if someone listening wants to start syncing her fueling with her cycle more intentionally, what's a simple first step that you would say, like, here's a great place to start if you're wanting to be more intentional about making sure that you are fueled consistently throughout your cycle?
Greatest place to start is first to make sure you're actually using an app so you know
Mhm.
where you're at in your cycle. And then the other thing is just to make sure that you're someone who's already committed to eating consistently. I think it's so common to, you know, if you eat more than usual one day to feel like, okay, that means tomorrow I have to eat less. And that doesn't correspond to the reality of like, no, like that's not how your cycle works. If you're in the luteal phase, most of those days, you're probably gonna be hungrier. And sometimes people are so surprised by how much hungrier they are, and, like, we tie a lot of guilt, like, we think there's something wrong with us. We're like, what is my deal?" And that's usually what it is, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you want more food, and you're craving these things because your body needs more food. And so I think to really recognize that you can learn so much about how to give your body what it needs by paying attention to where you are at in your cycle.
Well, how can people connect with you if they do want to get some more support in this area of fueling their bodies?
Yeah, you can always reach out by email. It's just jess@thewholedancer.com. You can check out more about me and what I do on my website, thewholedancer.com. I'm pretty consistent across social media. It's all The Whole Dancer on Instagram. And I also have a podcast. And I was gonna say too, I have a blog post that perhaps we can link in the show
Oh,
notes.
yeah.
It's 9 signs that you're not eating enough. We got through most of them, but there's a couple more. So
Yeah, no, that's super helpful because I think that, like we talked about in the episode, sometimes you just have accepted certain things as normal, and that if you see them
Right.
laid out like that, you're like, "Oh, oh,
Oh,
oh." Yeah, you might not even know that you're underfueling,
Yeah.
especially if you started dancing and didn't make any adjustments. I think that can maybe what wasn't underfueling before can become underfueling when you pick up a hobby like dance. So I'll definitely link that, and I'll link all the ways that you guys can get in touch with Jess if you want to work with her, have any questions. Definitely make sure to follow her on social media. I love the stuff that you put out on your Instagram. It's always super helpful and practical. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or leave a quick review. It really helps more adult dancers find the podcast. All the links and resources we mentioned today are waiting for you in the show notes. And if you want more adult ballet content in between episodes, come hang out with me on Instagram @thebusybunhead. See you next week after class.